On the Chevelle POS today. This is what my dash used to look like. And then I decided to get one of these overlays from Classic Dash. You pick your gauges, cost a lot of money. Did this years ago. That's what it looked like when I installed it. And here's what it looks like installed now. It looks pretty good. I mean, I gotta admit, it's a little bit of a cheaper option than buying a whole new dash. But when I was done, my wiper switch didn't work, and there were black, maybe ground, about 4 ground wires hanging down. I originally used these manuals here with these wiring diagrams that are pretty hard to read, and they're not consistent between each other. So kind of had to guess at it a little bit, but the thing is I didn't finish the installation correctly.
Might use that.
So I got to pull the thing apart and do it again. So here's where I'm at now. I got the dash out. Got to remember what the heck all these wires do because I wasn't smart enough to label them. I think I did pretty good wiring harness back there, but there's some kind of random wires, and this thing is worth every penny that I bought because it's color coded. So I open up this. That's what's not working. So I did a ground from that wiper switch right on up to there. The camera will focus. And then there's an existing ground that goes to this cluster, and as far as I know, that's factory, and those wires are kind of brittle and whatnot. But and then I got this other ground that I did just for good measure, which I'm going to put into the back of this existing harness on these behind these gauges. Now these gauges are already grounded, but I just kind of don't trust it because my blinkers don't really work. I don't know if that's the actual blinker switch, but I'm going to use that bullet connector, and you can see how it's tied in there to the back of this one gauge to a common ground. So this thing's going to ground in 2 places, through the existing harness and then through that bullet that I'm going to do. But that's where we're at. It looks like spaghetti. Now I got to find a switched source. And then I found this switched pink wire is coming out, and I've already cut it, but it goes into this cluster of wires here, which is just a mess. And as far as I know, this is factory, and so I've already cut it. And because I got so many accessories, like the fuel injection, and then all the wires, that I'm going to use this bus here for anything that needs 12-volt switched power source. So I've already screwed it in there. So from the fuse box, or I should say from the ignition, I'm going to plug it into that top terminal, and then whatever I need I can screw into these. So I got a common place, and as far as I can tell, that big cluster of pink wires went to a bunch of indicator lights. I don't know if you can see it through there very well, but it's in a nice, easy, accessible place. It would be nice to know what all these wires go to. They're labeled, they're color coded, but man, that's a thick wire there, and I don't know what the heck it goes to. It's hard to trace. And there's a red one. There's another thick pink one. I don't know. Maybe I should tie into one of these instead. I don't know. But it sure would be nice, you know. There's a thick bunch of wires. The wire I'm tying into is awful small. Green one. Isn't green for GM? And then I go to the starter? I don't know. But anyway, that's where we're at. There's a couple of bullet connectors I did for my switch panel, which I'll show you at the end. That one's got a switch power source, but I don't know why this one is on its own, so I'm going to clip it. And then that frees up this cluster here. But you can see, I don't know why it's got two inputs and about 4 outputs. But my wiring bus is going to take the place of this thing. I don't know, that thing needed to come out, that's for sure. But I think all those wires went into these indicator lights here, because I found them on the panel there, pink and blue and green and all that. So I think that's what I'm tying into. Hopefully it's going to work. This diagram sure is a heck of a lot better than those black and white ones from the manual, that's for sure. But I think I'm tying in right into this. Then again, I think it's missing. I think this diagram is missing a connector right there. So here it is, all wired up after several hours. Real easy to get to. Everything's got its own power source. And it's got a nice little plastic cover. Works pretty good. Looks nice. Serviceable. Maybe I should be smart and start labeling a bunch of stuff. What goes to the radio and what goes to the EFI, which on this ProFlow XT system, the computer is inside the cabin there. And I got power for the gauges. Forget what else is on that bus. But here's the first one I did. And that'll be off of the harness that I'm tying into. So I know which one's which. So now I'm seeing I got something extra here. This is my gen light, and it goes to its own connector with its own power. And I don't know why I did that. There's no reason why that this power supply can't just feed off of one of these existing. It's just a little LED light. So now I got to rewire that. And therefore it doesn't need its own dedicated 12 volt switched. So I get to do all that. Okay, I've tied in to the main common power supply for all of the gauges here. I've got my multimeter on ohms to see if I have a good connection here. That's going to be the power supply to my gen light. Got the multimeter. And this is the main power supply feed for the whole wiring cluster. So if I touch it, let's see. Oh yeah, we're good. I'll let it go. Touch it again. Yep. So we got a good connection. Power comes in here, goes to all these pink wires here. I'm tapping out here, and that'll be my gen light. Don't know why I'm doing this. I got a one-wire alternator in there, but maybe if I swap it out in the future. Dang it. Man. Okay, so this is my generator light, and I've tied in to the gauge wiring harness for the power, and then the actual indicator is here, and I put a bullet connector on the end of that. I'll zip tie that up, and then from the wiring harness in the dash, this is the gen light indicator. I got it labeled there. I got to order new labels. I want the black on white, but that's going to have to do. Progress. So now I'm seeing that I have another problem, which is this random yellow wire, which is labeled VSS ground. I don't even know what that is. It comes in through the harness right there, the yellow wire right there, comes in through the harness, comes around, and plugs in. And I know that it plugs in, or wait a minute. So here is the other end of that harness, that yellow wire, VSS ground, and that goes through my firewall. Doubt you can see that. That goes down through my firewall down to the transmission. Well, this thing plugs into, oh, heck. Where's that thing? All my efforts. Oh, it's down here. So that plugs in right there, the bullet connector. And then that I've traced, and all it does is ground out. So I got a yellow wire that comes from my transmission through the firewall to the harness right here, enters here, comes back and around, out, and ground. That didn't make any sense. Why don't I just have that wire grounded? Why does it even go through the harness? So now I got to go look that up. Well, I got the manual here for the dash. I found this. It says vehicle speed sensor, 2-wire VSS versus a 3-wire VSS. So this is the speed sensor. 12-volt ignition source. That's what I'm working on. I thought my gauge was GPS for the speed, so maybe I don't even use any of this. So now I got to go trace more wires. Lord. So I found some stuff out. This VSS ground and this random ground wire, which was hanging off, and the main ground for my gauge cluster, which is this one, was all three going to the same spot underneath the steering column. So I undid it, and that happens to hold my signal flasher, which I didn't know where that was, and is not working correctly. So I got that going for me. So I need to find a new ground source, and I think I'm going to use one of these new ones that I did, which is a little more accessible on the top here. Ugh. Everything goes in my eyes and my mouth. So I'm making a little bit of progress. Oh, and by the way, the signal flasher is rectangle. I happen to have a round one up there. It looks like the connector's the same. It's 90 degrees. I'm going to have to give that a try. Maybe I'll find a new location for this thing or just zip tie it, because that is awfully hard to get to on top of the steering column. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good, right? One of the wiring harnesses for the gauge, and this is the switched 12 volt ground, and then this is the gray is the dimmer. This is the speed signal, and this is ground for the speed signal. Yeah, and then this black is ground, which now goes right there. Sanded it real good. This is also going to be a ground for the gauge cluster. And then this is my new ground for my windshield wipers. Which is probably going to be another video. And then this ground coming off of here rolls into the main wiring harness. And that's not me, that's factory. And it splits out into 4. Goes into various bits over there. I don't even want to investigate that. That's where we're at. So back to this. So this yellow wire, which comes in from the transmission speed sensor, I have routed to the harness, spliced into the harness ground. Now I'm going to test to make sure that works. So I got my multimeter, got it on ohms, connected to where the ground is going to go. Comes through here, so I should have continuity through the yellow to the ground. Here's my probe, and I'm going to connect it to the yellow. Looks good. So it's going from there, which is going to go to the ground, which is going to be right there. It's all the way to there. Let go. We got continuity. Okay, progress. Well, it's just set in there so far, but a little bit of progress. I don't know if anything works. Well, I got the battery hooked back up. Let's see if anything works. Smell for smoke. Well, the volts looks about right. I think that did a self-test. Let's see if the hazards work. Oh, that's a plus. Let's see if the blinker works. Well, that works. What, this way? Well, that works. I like that. Well, let's see if the lights work. Can't really see in the daytime. Oh, yeah, I see the lights underneath there. And they dim. Yeah, see the lights through the hood there. Let's check the bright indicator. Looks good. Let's check the backup fan. I hear them. Is the computer, EFI computer up and running? Yes, it is. Let's see what voltage it says. 12.6. That looks close enough. Well, all right. Not my choice of music, but it works. Well, that's a success so far. I can't test this yet.
responsible.
Moral of the story, kids. Do it right the first time or you're going to do it twice. Can't test the wiper switch because I pulled the wiper motor out. Here's the electrical hookups for it. But I can test those now because these are supposed to ground out. Right? That's the power. And then that switch grounds these out, which runs the wiper motor. Which, by the way, here's my wiper motor. And that'll be in the next video. Well, that's it. Let me know what you think. Did I do it right? What could I have done differently? And thanks for watching.